Let's call the meeting to order. It is, I think it's 7:05 or 6, so let's call it 7:05 and call the meeting to order. I'm Steve White. I'm the president of the Land Trust. Welcome to everybody tonight. We've got a big action-packed agenda, which David is going to describe for you tonight. So I'm going to quickly pass things right over to David, and he can take over from here.
Hello, everybody. Sorry about this. Let me just make sure we're right on the, okay, so there we go. What's happening? There we go. Hello, all, everyone, and welcome to the 2022 Wilton Land Conservation Trust annual meeting. We have a wonderful evening prepared for you all. We'll go over some updates and highlights from 2021, talk about some news, and answer all of your exciting questions if you have any. 2021 was an incredible year for the Land Trust. I'm very proud of the WLCT team, our incredible board of trustees, our bookkeeper, Lee, our rangers, Gavin and Eli, our interns, Sarah and Julia, and even more importantly, you, our members, our partners, our volunteers. Thank you all for believing in the Land Trust and the mission and supporting the work. So tonight we have a fantastic guest speaker, the esteemed Dr. Mark C. Urban. He looks forward to sharing and discussing the latest research on climate change and how it's affecting conservation in Connecticut. So please make sure to stick around to the end, not only for his talk, but for Q&A with him after. It's a really exciting time to be involved with the Land Trust. We're growing and changing so quickly. And these are the folks that are the executive officers. And a moment ago, not only did we re-elect Craig Johnson, our vice president, for another 4-year term, but our slate of officers was also re-elected for another 1-year term. Congratulations to all of you, and thank you all. The organization is definitely a better place with you involved. So congratulations to everyone. We have one trustee who will be leaving us, Bruce Beebe. He was a former president and with the Land Trust for a very long time. I want to say that Bruce, on behalf of the Land Trust and the town of Wilton, thank you for everything that you've done for the Land Trust and the community. And the Land Trust really wouldn't be here as it is today without you. So thank you. So today we're doing more than ever to advance our mission and provide more public goods and services and to enhance and expand our 840+ acre portfolio. A quick note about this slide, it's my daughter's there actually in the foreground, and this is a Halloween themed books in a blanket event. If you could imagine 45-ish, maybe 30 to 40 kids running around, dancing, trick-or-treating, and having a story read to them at the meadow over there at the 183 Ridgefield Road Preserve. That's pretty much what we had going on. We have a very and critically important mission and a hardworking board, but it's really the support from our members that fuels our work. I mean this when I say this, there would be no Land Trust without our members, our friends, volunteers, and affiliates. Thank you all for your generosity. It has made everything that we'll share tonight possible. For the newer folks in the room, the Land Trust is an independent 501c3 community-focused nonprofit organization. We conserve land, protect biodiversity, enhance ecosystems, and build community. We're not a municipal government body or commission. 100% of our operational funding comes from our members who care deeply about conservation in Wilton. I feel like I really can't strike the chord enough. Thank you to all our marvelous members for believing in our mission and supporting the Land Trust. Yeah, so the Land Trust as of today is a very different organization than it was in the past. This is a drone shot here of us implementing the chestnut tree orchard over at our 183 Ridgefield Road Preserve that I'll go over momentarily. But I just wanted to share this really cool shot that was taken by one of our trustees' son, Scott Bogan, his son, Doug. So here on the agenda, we have next coming up is the president, sorry, I apologize. The president's report, but he's going to go over Chestnut Meadows, the 183 Ridgefield Road Preserve, the vision, the barn, and after that, I'll give my executive director's report, which will include stewardship, community, membership, development, and I'll share some goals for 2022. And then last but not least, the highlight of the evening, our featured guest speaker, Dr. Mark C. Urban. And before I move on from this slide, oh, there he is, I apologize. The button's a little sticky here over Zoom. This meeting is being recorded. I just want to let everyone know that. So please be mindful of your microphones, and remember to unmute during the Q&A session if you decide to speak. Other than that, before I say enjoy and kick it over to Steve, I just want to, we heard from a couple of our state representation. They said they might be able to make the meeting. It's hard to toggle through this list of folks here, but Will Haskell said he might join, and Hughes. I'm just flipping through to see if they are here. If you are, go ahead and start talking. If not, we'll catch you a little later. I don't hear anyone, so okay. Over to you, Steve.
All right, thanks, David. So I'm Steve White. I'm the president of the Land Trust. I want to just spend a few minutes talking to you about the state of the Land Trust. And I would say that the state of the Land Trust is good and strong. We have a re-energized group of people that have come together. We have a wonderful board. We were already in place, but I think over the last year or so, the board has stepped up more. We've done a lot of things, and we've crossed a lot of milestones. We've grown the membership quite a bit, which David will talk to you about. This is important because we need the membership, and we need the strength and the financial strength that comes with that. I'm very pleased to report that we are financially strong after just having completed the purchase of 183 Ridgefield Road, which I'll talk about in a minute. That was a big deal for us, and to still have money in the bank after that's left over, that's incredible. So thank you to everybody who donated for that project. We've gotten better at governance. We're holding more regular meetings that are more predictable and easy to follow and understand. We're getting better at adhering to the Land Trust's Alliance guidelines, which are set up by smarter people than we are to help Land Trusts do their jobs. We had our first ever bottom-up budget, thanks to the efforts of Mike Foster, our treasurer. So now we have a real budget document, not just a flimsy piece of paper that somebody put together. Thanks to our wonderful development committee under the leadership of Roger Volkenberg, who organized a terrific fundraising event this year. They put out a wonderful annual report, streamlined the process of doing all this development work, and have done a wonderful job. Our stewardship committee is chaired by a newcomer to the organization, actually a newcomer to town, Justin Phillips, who showed up at the Land Trust work days and said, I want to do more. And he stepped up and said he'd like to chair the stewardship committee. So we said, that's great, Justin. So he's really brought in a breath of fresh air with him to re-energize that committee. We have reinstituted the Land Acquisitions Committee under Craig Johnson. Thank you, Craig, for doing that. This will be looking into prospective land purchases, donations, dealing with all the myriad of topics that come up around land acquisitions. And last but not least, we have David McCarthy, who's been with us now for 18 months, and he has made a huge difference in the organization. His energy, enthusiasm, and communications skills have really helped us to pick ourselves up. He pretty much single-handedly wrote our wonderful annual report, which was instrumental in attracting new people to come and join us. So I think somebody's not quite on mute. Maybe that's Frank Mabley. We are beginning to see the fruits of our labors on the 183 Ridgefield Road coming together now. This, as I think David pointed out, this was really a big deal for the Land Trust to be able to buy this piece of property. It was a 13-acre meadow that's situated right near downtown Wilton. It's one of the beautiful meadows around the town. It was heading to becoming condominiums and development. Well, the Land Trust was able to raise over $2 million to buy this property and set it aside to never be developed. This is a wonderful accomplishment. And thanks very much to the Bauer Family Foundation, who started us off to be able to do this with a gift of $750,000. Without that gift, this never would have happened. Thanks also to Mary and John Brock and Mark and Linda Rubenstein for also big significant donations. And of course, the state of Connecticut stepped in with a grant for $707,000. We didn't think we'd be able to do it without the grant. It turns out we might have been able to squeak it by, but it would have been very tough. And most importantly to me personally is that our own board of trustees kicked in over $250,000 from their own pockets. That's quite a vote of confidence. Thank you to the board. We are building, as David mentioned, we're building an antique barn on the property. We had the good fortune through the introduction of Rick Pariseau, who lives in town, to be introduced to the Daniel Offutt Foundation. Daniel Offutt lived in Weston. He had an antique barn, which was available, and I think they were actually intending to sell it, but we took a look at it. We said we were interested. They were able to give us the barn and $300,000 to help demolish the barn, bring it over to 183 Ridgefield Road, and then reconstruct it. And so now we're in the process of putting it back up, slightly reconfigured, but it's going to be a wonderful building. We are calling 183 Ridgefield Road Chestnut Meadows at the request of the Bauer Family Foundation. We are very fortunate to have Rob Sanders, who's a talented architect in town, specializes in antique buildings and barns. He is contributing his time and services to this project. So thank you very much, Rob. We are, you can see now the barn going up in the slides here. We were able to use a lot of the Offutt barn, but sadly some of it was not, I think the worms had gotten to it. So we had to replace a few of the beams. But it's going to be a classic New England barn look. It's going to have a metal roof. It's going to have stone foundation facing on around the foundation. It's going to have a large classically styled windows framing the views of the meadow. There'll be inside, there'll be a donor wall honoring those who have contributed money to this project, and there'll be bathrooms and heating. This project has been run by our building committee over the last year, who have suffered a lot of problems with weather delays and supply chain problems and things like that, but they persevered. So thanks very much to the building committee for pushing this thing through. We're not quite on schedule, but we're not that far behind, and we're hoping to have it up and running by this summer. We have also engaged a wonderful landscape architect, Sylvia Erskine, to develop a landscape plan that will really showcase the barn. As you drive up into the meadow, you'll see this beautiful barn sitting up on the right-hand side and the meadow beyond it, unobstructed views of the beautiful meadow. There's going to be an outdoor meeting area for people coming in from the parking lot. There will be a sort of an outdoor classroom area with amphitheater, hopefully made out of stone seating. This will be a sort of an outdoor classroom. There'll be a native garden that we can put in native species. We're going to put in flax for our education program that David's going to tell you about in a little bit. They're going to be pollinators and native species in that. And of course, the meadow will have beautiful hiking trails that'll be carved through, so people can come up and walk this beautiful site. Parking has been moved out of the way, off to the side, so it doesn't spoil the scenic beauty of the place. So when you drive up, you'll drive around a kind of a circle, and the parking will be off to the side. And then as you walk into the barn, you'll see the barn will be framed by the big old beautiful trees on the one side and the stone wall and the meadow in the background. It's going to be a lovely setting. So we hope to have an event to honor the opening of this, the barn, maybe late in the spring, if everything goes right. It's hard to predict with these things. This barn will become the new center of gravity for the land trust. It'll be our home base. It'll be a place to have meetings, to have fundraisers, to have gatherings. It'll be a place to come up and walk and contemplate and enjoy yourself. And there'll be an office in there for our executive director. So David is going to tell you about some of the educational tie-ins that result in this property and the barn, but that's a little bit of a snapshot of where we are for now. So I want to wrap this up by saying that we, the Land Trust, I think are going in a very good direction, thanks to all the support of so many of you. I also want to put in an additional pitch that we still need help in lots of areas. If there are those of you out there listening to what I'm saying, if you want to get involved and participate, we need help on these committees. There are lots of things to be done. If you want to go to work and have some fun with us, please get a hold of us and let us know. Thanks so much for your support. And now I'll pass the gavel over to David to tell you about the Executive Director report. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Before we do that, I just want to ask if anyone had any questions for Steve around 183 and this amazing design that he just announced. Well, without any questions, maybe you'll think of something a little later. We'll have some time. I do want to thank State Representative Ann Hughes for joining us. She's demonstrated strong support for our work in conservation and habitat restoration. And Ann, if you're hearing me and you're willing to, would you like to say a few words?
Hey, thanks everybody for all of your work and for keeping this really front and center of the public as we attempt to make some real transformative ways to address climate change and carbon sequester. And I'm sorry, there's another meeting going on, which I can't seem to turn down. So I don't want to distract you too much, but this is very important. If we don't get kids outside and falling in love with the environment, we can't ask them to save it. So that's where I come from, is that this is the future that the next generation is inheriting, and we need to have spaces where they encounter and immerse in it directly. So thanks for your work.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you for supporting conservation. Thank you for your kind words, and thank you for your service. Okay, so thank you, Steve. And again, if anyone has any questions for Steve, we could have a Q&A section. Q&A at the end of my report, and you can feel free to ask any question to Steve or myself. So without any further ado, hi, I am David McCarthy. I'm very proud to say that I am the Executive Director of the Wilton Land Conservation Trust. Thank you for tuning in. For those of you joining us now, you missed some excellent cash prizes. I think there was a trip to Paris going around there. So congratulations to all that won. You guys are all hooked up. All right, so driving around Wilton, you really can't help but to notice the abundance of conserved land and protected waters, timeless meadows, historic rock walls. We are Wilton's Land Trust, and we are all about those spaces. The Land Trust currently owns or holds conservation easements on 119 separate parcels, totaling about 835 acres. We own outright 97, covering about 440 acres. We're avidly engaging landowners to help them design their own conservation legacy and contribute to further conservation in Wilton by means of a donation or a conservation easement. If you're out there and you're listening and you'd like to preserve your land forever and see it enjoyed by future generations, reach out, send us an email. We'd love to talk to you. 2021 was a fantastic year for the Land Trust. We set new records in membership, general trust contribution, volunteers in the field, trees planted, invasive species removed, partnerships made, public events, and the list kind of goes on. 2021 was a home run. The Land Trust is situated within the beautiful Wilton community, and we're blessed to be a part of it. We strive to build a stronger, diverse, and more inclusive community that's centered around nature right here in Wilton. We seek to inspire the next generation in order to help facilitate that, as Ann had said. We provide professional internships and paid opportunities to Wilton's youth. These are our 2021 interns. On the left, Julia Almazari, and on the right, Sarah Schneidman, twice visiting, actually. Thank you both for your very hard work. Our rangers, open space and field ranger is the full title there. These are paid positions. In 2021, we had Eli Grass, who was followed by Gavin Fusco, and he's still with us. Thank you both for your dedication to Wilton's environment. If anyone's wondering, the field rangers, what they do is they clear trails, they run work days, they write blogs, produce social media, help facilitate really everything in and around conservation and management. They work in the spring and fall seasons for about 5 hours a week. Gavin, if you're on, I believe you said you were joining us. Would you mind sharing a few words about your experience working with the Land Trust?
Gladly. Well, in spring of 2021, I first started volunteering with the Land Trust, and I learned through that. I've joined with my family through the Stewardship Sundays, and I ended up enjoying it a lot. And when you offered me the position of ranger to fill in for Eli in the fall, I was like, sure, let's do it. So when that happened, I really enjoyed going through and then being able to help take charge of those Stewardship Sundays, and also kind of work behind the scenes to sort of organize those events and other things and such like that, and go onto trails and all of that. And it's been really fun. So I look forward to continuing in the spring as well.
Thank you. Yes, and Gavin has taken, each ranger kind of takes the position into their own hands, and Gavin's been the first to start to organize and lead his own workday. So thank you, Gavin. And we're looking forward to having you out there in our spring. So if you come to our Stewardship Sundays in the spring, you'll see Gavin. It's important to recognize leadership, especially among rising youth. We recognize environmental leadership in the form of a Junior Book Award and a $1,500 Senior Scholarship Award. In 2021, our Junior Book Award was presented to Julia Almazari. Congratulations again. And in our 2021 E. Dan Capel Senior Scholarship Award of $1,500 was presented to Eli Grass. Congrats again, Eli. If you're out there, we miss you. Here at the Land Trust, we like getting people out into nature, and we are a firm believer in the power of partnerships. We work with local organizations to advance our mission and enrich the Wilton community and create opportunities for people to get out and explore nature and our preserves. We had a record year of events in 2021, including our Stewardship Sundays. We had a total of 20 events, and we established 4 new partnerships. We connected families with turtles and tortoises by partnering with the Turtle Room. It was really great seeing Tortoise just walk around for the entire presentation. This is something that is coming back probably in May. I'm not sure why the slide is not advancing, so allow me to, there we go. And it went one too many, that's why. So we established an American chestnut tree orchard with our partner, the American Chestnut Foundation. This was a monumental day at Chestnut Meadows. And it was really hard work. So we put 10 in the ground, and it wasn't easy building those cages. So a special thank you to everyone that helped. And we will be back this May. 10 is the goal, but I think we're shooting for 20. So the end goal is 100, but we want to keep them pretty close in age. So if you're interested, reach out, sign up. We brought about Create and Connect, a painting workshop in partnership with Wilton Go Green and artist Karen Siegel. This was really cool. This is something that we're very excited and are going to be doing again this year, perhaps twice. We brought some folks into a meadow and Karen took it away and they painted beautiful landscapes. This is something that's not for professionals or even novices. This is from beginner on up. So if you're interested in learning more, subscribe to our e-newsletters and check our website out. We established a pollinator garden just outside the Comstock Hill Cemetery with the Children of the American Revolution. We're happy to partner with them, and believe it or not, they did most of that work. They were planning on doing that, and we partnered to bring labor together and bring camaraderie together, and we're looking forward to hopefully partnering again and expanding that meadow. I apologize, the pollinator garden. We read books to kids in nature with Tutor Chest. We went through 3 preserves over 3 months. We had a wonderful turnout. And this is definitely coming back, but with new partners, local partners. So tune in for more on that. We continued enriching the Wilton community with our long-term partners. We stewarded the Comstock Hill Cemetery with the Daughters of the American Revolution. This is something that takes place 3 times a year, spring, summer, and fall. We built boardwalks with the Scouts. A special thank you to Matt Dooley and the Dooley family. Matt will forever hold a special place at the Land Trust and in our hearts. Thank you. Some Scouts have actually reached out to continue Matthew's work. So this boardwalk on the Nick Pariseau Memorial Trail will be continued. It's helping everyone get over a very muddy section of the trail. We guided you across our preserves in partnership with the Woodcock Nature Center. We helped you explore your own backyards with staff specialists, gave you a new lens to see Wilton, and this is coming back. Discussions are in the works. And we, as you saw, we honored our young environmental leaders in town, and we also spoke with kids about nature as part of Middlebrook's 6th grade field trip. We really love connecting kids with nature, and we're trying to get more kid-friendly opportunities going. So if you're listening and you have an idea or you want to have a partnership, reach out. I'd love to talk to you. Our efforts to enrich the community and foster environmental education is made possible by you, our membership. So I really can't say it enough. Thank you. Spending time in nature can be healing. And so we're working really hard to create more opportunities for people to engage with nature. And through our events, we really think we're reaching new audiences and really getting people out there in new ways. I said it before, and I'll say it again. We really wouldn't be here today without our membership. They're the lifeblood of the organization. We're working hard to inspire public interest in our mission and welcome support for conservation through membership. So this is to show our growth. In 2020, we saw a 44% increase in giving compared to 2019. And in 2021, we saw a 60% increase in giving compared to 2020. This upward trend really tells me 2 things: that Wilton cares about nature and Wilton loves its land trust, and we love Wilton right back. I joined the Land Trust in 2020, and since then, building community, expanding membership, and inspiring further support for conservation have been the backbone, the core of my work. It really does take a village, and there's no Land Trust without our members. So thanks to you, our members, our vision of a more robust community centered around nature is taking place. 2020 to 2021 giving year, we inspired 111 new members, and we're just in 5 months into this giving year, and we're at about 290 to 300 members, whereas last year at this point we're at 250. I really do have a feeling that this giving year we might break 400 for the first time, and that would be amazing. So thank you to all who will help make that possible. We're always looking for new ways to reach out to our community and connect more people with nature. We're making an effort to make the people in our town more aware of their land trust and to spread environmental awareness and increase support for conservation. And this is by means of our annual report. Every October, we send out an annual report to every household in Wilton to rally support, keep our members informed, and really get our message out. If you're new to town, new to Wilton, and you'd like a copy, please email me. I'll happily send you one. So Steve covered a lot about Chestnut Meadows. I'll be short. One of the things I think happened when the community came together to forever preserve Chestnut Meadows was it saved more than land. I believe that together we saved hope, hope that land in Lower Fairfield County can still be preserved, especially so close to a commercial center. We saved opportunity for passive recreation and active education, and we saved history and habitat. We preserved one of the last family farms in Wilton, and we protected the headwaters of the Comstock Brook And that process, as Steve pointed out, it led to a rejuvenation of the land trust inside and out. Acquiring the preserve also brought about the development of a wonderful community resource. Once complete, this 17th century Daniel Offet barn will be a place for Wilton's Land Trust to call home. Echoing Steve at the members meeting, a big thank you to the building committee for their dedication, hard work, and commitment to building this home through the onslaught of unforeseen challenges with COVID and supply chains. It's underway, and we're very excited for this development. So please stay tuned for more. We saved 183 for many reasons, and education is a big one. Recreational and educational programming was a significant direction of the Land Trust in 2021 and will be a big focus in 2022. The value of Chestnut Meadows goes beyond conservation and habitat. Saving the preserve really gave us a canvas on which to paint memories and experiences with the community, really forever. In 2021, even with limited access and parking, we invited the community to Chestnut Meadows to learn more about turtles, sing and dance, plant trees, listen to stories, even trick-or-treating. We even remove a bunch of tires out of the wetland. A special shout out to our neighbor and community partner, the Hillside Cemetery, for supporting our events with private parking to make things possible, help make things possible. The Chestnut Meadows Preserve enables us to advance our mission in ways that are really not possible without it. With the added facilities of parking, the barn, and restrooms, we'll invite the community to our new home to enjoy unique and original WLCT programming, such as educational events, guided hikes, birding lectures, instructional workshops, small gatherings, fundraisers. I mean, you name it, it's going to be possible there. In the long term, we'll develop genuine and unique educational programming like youth programs, gardening workshops, regular series of lectures and experts that are sharing their knowledge. As a community leader in Wilton, we believe in the power of partnerships, and we have big plans to ramp up educational programming at Chestnut Meadows and our preserves Wilton-wide. As part of our diverse portfolio of education at Chestnut Meadows, we plan to have 3 educational partners: the Wilton Historical Society, Woodcock Nature Center, and the American Chestnut Foundation. We're working with them to develop new and exciting educational programs, such as tours, the Chestnut Orchard, and a flax program from seed to linen. Last May, with the support of our community and Rings End and our partners, the American Chestnut Foundation, we did establish that germplasm orchard, and we do plan to plant 10 more, and I couldn't be more excited. This preserve is nothing short of extraordinary. It's a place with a story that will be told forever, and a place for future stories that will unfold forever. We're grateful for all our members and donors that really made this purchase possible. We couldn't have done it without you, so thank you so much. We plan on celebrating and memorializing this accomplishment with an elegant donor wall inside the barn and having a christening event, all to be had in the future. So if you aren't subscribed to our e-newsletters, please do so, and stay in touch with us so that you can not miss these fantastic events. In the meantime, it is closed to the public. It's an active construction site. We're excited to share this resource with you, but we would ask that you just remain patient and again, just keep a distance, look from the road, look from the cemetery, do your best to just, I guess, wait it out. But this is a video I made showcasing the property, and on screen are all the things that we saved, whether it's land, whether it's acreage, rock walls, the conservation value. It's a fantastic video, and it's on our website for everyone to see right now. So conservation really does take a village, and we do depend on our volunteers to keep our preserves healthy and accessible. So I do want to thank everyone, because without them, we wouldn't have been able to do all the work we're doing, such as restore habitat, maintain our trails. Our flagship program, Stewardship Sundays, led by our youth interns, are really taking people out of all ages out into the environment and getting people together to steward, and take home some skills in their own home garden or backyards. At the end of each season, I commemorate everyone with these wonderful slideshows. So if you're wondering what it looks like, you can go over to our website and watch a video for each season since I've been with the Land Trust and get a good taste. A big development in 2021 was habitat restoration by removing invasives and planting natives, and this will only intensify in 2022. We're incredibly honored to have been selected for a $5,000 upland to lowland grant. And with more general trust funds budgeted for stewardship and this grant, we will be working across our preserves to enhance ecosystems and restore more native environments. I'm happy to say that our stewardship committee is under new management. Justin Phillips is our chair. He's a volunteer rock star, and we're already rocking and rolling under his leadership, and I really look forward to seeing where it takes us. Justin, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, David. So I'm fairly new to Wilton, and when we moved here, a couple of the things that we really loved and have come to appreciate even more about Wilton is the community and the wonderful families that we've met, and also just the beautiful open spaces that the town provides. And I think those two things really set the town apart. And being part of the Wilton Land Conservation Trust has just been a great opportunity to strengthen both of those things and teach my children about giving back to the community and being really part of it as we're new. And so I joined the stewardship committee because I thought it was a great opportunity to really make an impact in those ways. And I just want to thank David and thank Steve for their fantastic leadership. And I'm very much excited about where we're going. And I also want to thank all of the members and the donors and the trustees for all of everything they've given to really make this organization so successful. And I think this is just the beginning. So very much excited to be part of this. And I've only been doing this for a few months, but I think there's a lot to look forward to. So I'll just leave it at that. But thank you, David.
Thank you, Justin. And yeah, we're very excited to have you, and we're very excited to ramp up our Stewardship Sunday season come spring. So I encourage you all to get involved. If you're looking for a chance to get out there with your neighbors and contribute to this great work and learn more about your open space right in your backyard, sign up. Check out our website, get subscribed on our newsletters. I hear there's some t-shirts that are going to get made in the Stewardship Committee, so I'd join sooner than later if you'd like to have one of those. Couple of quick words, key goals for 2022. We hope to complete the Offet Barn, fingers crossed, for Memorial Day. We are going to be having hopefully a christening event at the meadow. We want to plant more chestnut trees, and hopefully 20. We will continue to enhance and bolster our stewardship program. We are going to improve our trail maintenance program and our easement monitoring program, and I'm confident we can do that under Justin's leadership. Continue to develop more proactive operating committees. We are in need of more hands on deck. So if anyone's interested out there in joining and helping with communications, marketing, development, stewardship, let me know. I want to meet more of you, our incredible Wilton residents, and help energize more support for conservation. And internally, we are looking to continue improving our board governance, working toward the possibility of an LTA, Land Trust Alliance certification, and to strengthen the board with new blood, team building events, etc. So at this point, I'd like to open it up for any questions.
David, hi, it's Jim. I just wondered how you become a member.
That's a great question. I'm really happy you asked that, and I should have made that more clear. To become a member it's considered to have given in a membership year. So our membership year spans pretty much the end of September, so the 1st of October to the end of September. So we're in the 2021 to 2022 giving year. And in this year, if you give, you're a member for this year. I believe the minimum to become classified as a member is $100. Under that, it's, I believe, like a supporter or something. I don't have the right terminology in front of me, but to become a member, you simply give a minimum of about $100 a year and you're in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great question, by the way. I should have said that. Do we have any questions at all for anyone?
David, I don't have a question, but I just wanted to acknowledge Ross Tortel, selectman from Wilton, who joined the Zoom meeting. Shout out to Ross because he's a big supporter of conservation. Thanks for attending, Ross.
Thanks, Ross. Where are you? I'm trying to see. Thank you for pointing that out. Thank you. Would you like to share a word or two, Ross?
Yes, I would. And there we go. I finally got my camera on.
Oh, wonderful.
I just wanted to say thank you for all the work you do. You know, the Board of Selectmen have really begun to understand the importance of the open space to Wilton. It's a gem that is really becoming polished and becoming, in a town where we ask about amenities, a key component to the culture and life of our town. So the Land Trust plays an important part in making that happen. The amount of work you do, the stewardship that you exert to make these places accessible and fun to be at is really extraordinary. And I look forward to supporting your efforts in the future. So thank you very much for that. I'm very pleased to be here.
Thank you for the kind words, the encouragement and support. We look forward to working with the town more closely in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. So without any further ado, I'd like to turn it over to our featured guest speaker, Dr. Mark C. Urban. What I'm going to do, Mark, is I haven't figured out how to allow you to share slides, but I can make you host. So I will make you host because I know that that works.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Make host, change host. So did you just see like a little prompt?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to stop my share. And while Mark is setting up his slides, I'm going to go ahead and introduce him. Mark is an award-winning scientist, the Arden Chair and Professor of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology at the University of Connecticut, founder and director of the Center of Biological Risk. He's a global expert on climate change impacts on nature and evolutionary ecology. He received his undergraduate degree, a BS in environmental science and political science at, I'm going to murder this, Muhlenberg College. Muhlenberg, thank you, and summa cum laude. And he received his MESc or master's from Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies in 2001 and his PhD from Yale University in 2006. He's an avid field biologist and makes every opportunity to get out in the field to learn more about the diversity of life and the threats to it. Routinely spends time in ponds, lakes, streams, and regions ranging from New England to the northern slope of Alaska. He founded and directs the Center of Biological Risk, the first ever devoted to forecasting the complex risks to society mediated by ecosystems. He's authored over 75 scientific articles appearing in top journals such as Science, Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, Nature and Climate Change, and has been cited at over 11,000 times. Wow, that's impressive. His work has uncovered new principles that routinely challenge existing ideas, including changing the spatial scale of adaptation, the importance of adaptation ecology, and highlighting the joint ecology and evolutionary responses to global change. More recently, his work has focused on designing global efforts to estimate and mitigate extinction risks from climate change on biodiversity. His work on climate change impacts on species extinction was highlighted on one of the top scientific discoveries in 2015 by Discover magazine and the Royal Society's update to the 5th IPCC report. That's International Policy, what is that, Mark? Climate change. What is the
Intergovernmental panel on climate change? Yes.
Yeah, thanks. His research has been covered on news outlets around the world, including The Times, NPR, CBS, CNN, BBC, and even The Guardian, National Geographic. In 2015, he led the annual contingent of UConn students and faculty and staff to the United Nations Summit on Climate Change. Last but not least, he was awarded both the Young Investor and Presidential Award from the American Society of Naturalists, and has twice been named a Web of Science highly cited researcher. In summary, he's a really cool dude, and I'm really excited to hear his talk. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Mark Sierban.
Well, thank you, David, for that nice introduction. And I really appreciate your time, and I'll look forward to talking a bit about my research and what we're trying to do to understand how wildlife are responding to climate change and what I like to call the global heat age. But first, I just want to say, wow, it's really incredible to hear all the great things going on in your land trust. I'm a member of my local land trust. It's called Joshua's Trust. And just love the land trust and what they're doing for local communities and for nature. You know, I work in Connecticut. I work on amphibians, and you'll see some of that later on. But I also have been working for over 10 years now in this area, shown in the slide. This is the northern part of Alaska. You see in the background the Brooks Range, which arcs across the northern part of Alaska. Behind the picture taker here is Prudhoe Bay, and looking at a relatively remote part of Alaska. And we've been studying fish populations there during this time. And, you know, normally when we would go in to do our research, this is what we would find, right? So we come in Arctic spring, which is really May, and the landscape would be covered in snow, and we would be able to use snow machines to get our equipment in. And the lakes in which our fish were living would be fully ice covered, so we could sit there and wait for the ice to melt and to catch the fish that we're trying to work on to understand their dispersal. But as you saw in that opening picture, when we came in this year, things were quite different. So that was our camp, the orange tents there. And we're basically camped on this, in the background there is in that valley is the river where the fish would swim out, and on to the left is a big lake. We came in this year and it was amazing because everything was already green. The ice had already melted out. We couldn't use snow machines, obviously, so we had to use helicopters to move our camp out to the site. And it was just a real wake-up call for us that something was happening here, and it was happening very quickly in this region. And so what we came to understand is that you know, what we saw here was actually a very different Arctic. So this was actually what was predicted way into the future, way in at 2100, that May to June 2015 had already occurred. And so we're seeing is that the predictions are coming true very quickly, and we're starting to see changes at this field site. And so there's us getting the helicopter to deliver our equipment. And one of the things we noticed was that right along the lake, all day we could just hear this melting. And so it was so warm that year, it already created this big slump of the soil. So you guys probably know that in these northern parts, the soil is permafrost, so it's permanently frozen. But with warming now, it's starting to melt and create these huge mucky pits. And so that was a really warm year, and we were to catalog the extent of that thaw. And then we came back the next year, and I'm just going to overlay the photo that I took from the same position from that next year, and you can see the thaw happening farther and farther out, to the point that we have to really get a wide angle lens to see it all. And our tents in the same position, everything else in the same position. You can see how quickly the Arctic is just melting, and you know, you look out across that landscape, and it just looks like the landscape is given up. And all night long, you can just hear the trickle of water from that ice as it melts out, and 10,000-year-old rocks fall out of that used to be ice, and melt out into the landscape, and effects on the fish populations as those ponds and streams get salty from that meltwater. So that brings me to the date of February 1985. When I give talks like this to my students, I often ask them who was born before February 1985, and no one raised their hand. I won't embarrass anyone here. I was certainly born before then. And the point I want to make with the students is that they were born in this very different period of Earth. And so if we all go back to February 1985, you can close your eyes if you want. No, most people are just have black screens anyway. But February 1985 was a year in which the top song was by Wham with an exclamation point. So Wake Me Up Before You Go Go. And the top movie was The Breakfast Club. And the new Mac computer had 120 kilobyte RAM, approximately 20 to 40,000 times slower than my phone. So a very different era. And the reason why I'll bring us back to that period is because it's really important in the history of humankind and also of the Earth. So February 1985 was the last month in which there were average or below average temperatures across the Earth. And so every month since February 1985 has actually been warmer. And so this really indicates a break point in which we've entered what I call the heat age, a period where we are in these abnormally warm temperatures. And so you can see that this is one of my favorite graphs. I wish it went a little bit farther into today, but you can see how every month now, beginning in the 1980s, is warmer. There are a few blue squares if you squint up until 1985, but basically every month is warmer than that average. And it took us 165 years to raise the Earth's temperature 2 degrees Fahrenheit. And this is something that we've known about since the 1800s. In fact, chemists knew about the potential for the greenhouse gas effect way back, and they'd figured this out with careful experiments in the lab. But what they didn't think was that humans would have the capacity to release so much of the greenhouse gases, especially carbon dioxide and methane, that it would result in basically a blanket that would retain heat on the Earth, that would raise the temperature of the Earth. They thought that was ridiculous, even up until the 1930s, 40s. Really wasn't until the 60s and 70s that we realized that it was possible and we were doing it. Well, the way things look, it will take just 30 years for us to raise the Earth's temperature another 4 degrees Fahrenheit. So things are really progressing quickly. And if we get back to this pristine Arctic where things are changing rapidly, the question that I often get is well, is that that's just Alaska, right? And we can see here how quickly things are warming, particularly in winter and spring, 5 or 4 degrees Fahrenheit. And then people ask, well, why is the Arctic warming so quickly versus say the tropics or even the South Pole? And it turns out that it's a pretty simple fact, and you can think about it if you have a car with either black seats or white seats. Essentially what we're doing is we're changing the color of the northern part of the Earth. So not only are we warming the temperatures, but we're also causing this change that turns the Earth from white, from ice and snow in the polar ice cap, to dark water, which we know that if we go into a car seat on a sunny day and sit down on it with shorts on, we might burn ourselves a little bit. And that's the same thing that's happening to our Arctic. And so we can see those changes as the sea turns blue and soaks up the sun's energy. And it's interesting to note that the Arctic sea cap has been there since the beginning of humans. And so we're facing the prospect by 2030 or 40 of not having an Arctic ice cap. And that's a bit scary. We've never lived in a world like that. And the Arctic sea cap is the air conditioner for the northern part of the Earth. And we see that if we don't just look at Alaska, but we look at Connecticut. So let's move from Alaska, which maybe some of us been to, but not everyone, to Connecticut. You can see some of the same patterns, that we're warming quickly in the winter and spring. And that's because what happens in the Arctic also happens down here. And so we've looked at this, and temperatures are changing in Connecticut, and under the conditions in which we release the conditions that we're releasing now, we could raise the temperature by 5 to 8 degrees Fahrenheit by 2100, which would basically be like having Connecticut with the same climate as Virginia. And I think we're starting to see those changes already in Connecticut, where we see less snow and warmer summers. My brother lives in Virginia, and he gets snow once or twice a year, and it disappears pretty quickly. I think that's where we're headed. All right, so that's a brief overview, but you're probably asking yourself, this guy is a biologist, when is he going to get to the biology and wildlife and nature? Well, that's where I've come to, is that I work in these areas and I see these changes happening, like in the Arctic, and I don't want to see these creatures disappear. And so I see it as my job is to try to protect all the species we can. I have hope that eventually the Earth will cool back down, and these species, hopefully will still be around so that they can come back and recolonize and still persist for my children and my grandchildren. And there's a lot of different organisms we might focus on. Polar bears are one. There's American pikas out west in the mountains, the tuatara in New Zealand. But they're all kind of distantly related. This mouse on the right is a beach mouse that lives off the coast of Australia, and unfortunately, this is the first real climate change extinction. There's been other species that have become extinct through a variety of different threats, but this one lived on an island. The sea level was rising because of change, and it got wiped off before they could rescue it. So that's what we face. We face these challenges of trying to maintain nature and wildlife, like so many benefits to us. So I've looked at this, do a whole bunch of bubbles here, but the main point here is that as we raise the temperature of the Earth, I've looked at a whole bunch of different studies, and the suggestion is that extinction rates will increase, and not only that, but they actually start to ramp up. So we can choose where we want to be on this chart. We could be at the current rate of about 1 degree Celsius rise, where about 3% of species might be at risk of climate change, or the target from the Paris Agreement of 1.5 that would only raise about 1% of the risk, or we could continue on the current path, and that would get us to 16% extinction rates, which would be like resigning 1 in 6 species to extinction. So pretty scary stuff. And usually, like I said, we think about polar bears, but I've worked in the Arctic for ages, and I've never seen a polar bear. I think many of you have never seen a polar bear. And so while they are threatened by climate change, it's not the best way to communicate those threats. And so what I like to do is to look locally. And what I'll do is I'll tell some stories of local changes to wildlife. There are stories of extinction, loss, expansion, and recovery. So let's start with the gloomy part of extinction. So hopefully some of you know what this bird is. This is the salt marsh sparrow. It's a beautiful little sparrow that lives along the narrow coastline from Maine down to Virginia. It's one of the few species that you could probably see from Manhattan. And in Connecticut, if you go down to any salt marsh along the coast, you should be able to spot one sitting there on the grass. Right now, there's about 50,000 of them, so it doesn't seem like it's threatened at all. But this is a bird that you should go down and take your kids and grandchildren to go see, because there's a good chance it will be extinct, at least in the wild, in the next 30 or 35 years. So why is that? Well, this is a bird that makes its living stuck between becoming a raccoon omelet on the shore and being inundated by the ocean. So it puts its nest right in that salt marsh, right near the edge of the sea. And it's been successful for tens of thousands of years doing this. And it puts its nest just so that its chicks and eggs don't float out during the highest king tides of the month. But unfortunately, what's happening more and more is that as the climate warms and it's increasing the sea level rise, especially along Connecticut's coast. And so let me unpack that a bit. So why is the ocean rising? Well, there's two parts, and my students often get one of them but get it wrong, and they miss the second one. So the half of the effect of sea level rise from climate change is just warming of the water. And so we know that most things get bigger as you warm them up, and water is no different. It's a small amount. So if you heat a pot of water in your pot, it's a tiny amount. But if you imagine heating the sextillion gallons of water in the ocean, even just a little bit, you start to see enough increase to be noticeable. So it's half the rise, and then the other half is through melting of land ice. So my students often say it's the polar ice cap. That ice is the same as the water in terms of level. So we're talking about is ice on land that melts and comes in the ocean. So anyway, so salt marsh sparrow here is laying its eggs there, and if the sea level rises just a little bit, you can see that those eggs will float out. Now, right now, the eggs stay in the nest. The mother bird comes back, sits on them, warms them back up, and they're fine. But as we know, if we go to some place like Hammonasset Park, we know that the oceans are rising pretty quickly, and during storms, the entire area is covered with water. And so my colleague, this is work by Chris Elphick, an ornithologist at UConn in my department. So he's been working on these birds now for years, and what they've been able to document is that their populations are decreasing by about 9% a year. And you can imagine if you got an investment that's losing 9% a year, well, you're not going to have much left very soon. And they predict by 2055, just based on the tides and sea level rise, that there will be no more habitat for this bird to lay its eggs and nest. Now, there could be one thing that could happen that could save it, and that's if the salt marsh expands into that forested area in the background. And so essentially the salt marsh tracks that sea level rise. Unfortunately, the timing of that is not quite right. Those trees, even if they die, they prevent the salt marsh from moving very quickly. Plus, there's been a lot of fortification of those areas because of the sea level rise by private landowners and public landowners. And so the salt marsh is not advancing very quickly enough to save the bird. One sort of, thing we don't hope for, but one of the things that does advance the salt marsh quickly is a hurricane, and we know that there can at least be the probability of a hurricane hitting Connecticut, like the hurricane of 1939. That was so powerful that it actually picked up water from Long Island Sound and sprayed it on windshields in Brattleboro, Vermont. So it's sort of what I like to call a hopeless hope for the bird that might create some more of that salt marsh, but is not anything we want to happen. All right, so sticking with the gloomy and hopefully building up to a more positive message is thinking about loss. And so this is the New England lobster, which is now commonly known as the Maine lobster for a good reason. And so lobster was really plentiful in Connecticut, and so much so that there are stories that the prisoners in jails would revolt because they were given too much lobster. So lobster in the Sound was so plentiful that in a storm it would pile up on the beaches, and people would eat as much as they could before it went bad, and it was served to prisoners and servants and the like. But if we look at the distributions, this is just a map where the blue is where the lobster does really well. You can see that even in the 90s, the eastern part of Long Island Sound there was pretty good habitat for the lobster, and even northern parts of Maine weren't that good habitat. But we've seen amazing warming of the oceans through climate change. So this is just the anomalies from 1985 to 2012, and you see that warming in the Gulf of Maine and Long Island Sound especially. And that's been enough to shift the range of the lobster basically right out of Long Island Sound. You can see it's out of the blue and even the green. And now the lobster does really well in the Gulf of Maine, which is where most of the lobstering goes on. And in Long Island Sound, we could see this happen in real time almost. So like most climate change threats, it's not always a direct result, but often through changes in species interactions. And in this case, it was a disease of the shell. And there was no reports of the disease before the early 1990s. as those waters warmed, it allowed this disease to now attack the lobsters as they were molten. And we see the catch per unit effort there, CPUE. That's the number of lobsters per lobster trap, goes from about 1 every 3 to basically functionally extinct. And that's what we saw in terms of the lobstering. So basically there's very few to little lobster fisheries left in Long Island Sound, and most of the people who are doing that basically had to shift careers and no longer go after lobster. All right, moving on to expansion. So not only do things decrease, but things can move into Connecticut. And so I think all of us are used to winter scenes of the cardinal in the snowy pine branch. We may even send cards down with a picture like this. And I think, this gets at the baseline of what we know about how things are changing, because at least in my lifetime, this has always been a winter bird. But if you go back to the so-called Audubon Christmas count, where people go out in the midst of winter and count birds, you see highlighted there is the cardinal in southern New England. There were never any reports before 1944. And so the cardinal existed in Connecticut in the summer, but it couldn't make it in the winter. And then the winters have warmed. And so now we see things like the cardinal, the mockingbird, the Carolina wren, and tufted titmouse all winter long. I don't think anyone's going to squawk about cardinals being here in winter, but some of those southern species are not things that we really want. And so this is the southern pine beetle. This is work by Tom Wardley at the Connecticut Extension Center. And these are, as the name implies, southern pine beetles, and they cause amazing damage to timber and forests. This is an outbreak down, I think this is Georgia. And they cause billions of dollars damage. And as the winters have warmed, they were limited in their ability to survive winters. But as winters have warmed, they moved northward into New Jersey and then into Long Island. And it was just a short trip on the breezes over Long Island Sound to land in Connecticut a couple years ago. And they're expanding throughout now. And so they particularly infect the pitch pines. And you can identify them by the shotgun and popcorn pattern. So this is the tree trying to expel the beetle larvae from the bark, those yellow spots, and they leave these holes in them and kill the tree. And so predictions are that basically already they should be throughout southern New England, and if you follow that line of 2020, and moving up into northern parts of New England and even Canada as time goes on. Again, just because of warmer winters. Okay, so let's get to something a little more positive, and this is my own work. We'll talk a bit about recovery. And so if any of you have traipsed around and looked at some vernal pools in the spring, you might notice some salamanders in there. And this is a really important salamander. This is a marbled salamander, which is basically like the wolf of the temporary pond. And I say that because this is a predator that actually survives winter under ice cover. And then when all the other spring breeding amphibians come out, the wood frogs, the peepers, it's big enough to be a really important predator on those amphibians. And so it's an important part of the ponds in southern Connecticut. But again, with climate change, what we're seeing is that this predator is expanded and moving into new ponds and also moving northward. And we've done research to look at this, and it turns out that it's basically the ice cover on the ponds that limits their oxygen. And so if their oxygen drops below a certain level, then they basically don't survive. And so as winters warm, which we know winters are warming faster than any other season because of the warming of the Arctic sea cap, the loss of that sea ice, we're seeing this predator expand. And when they expand the places, they have a tremendous effect. So they really start to reduce those populations of whatever they eat. And so this is showing you how that distribution has changed. So when I first came to Connecticut in 2001 to do my graduate research, they were in about half the ponds in my site. I went over to sunny California. I brought my wife to Santa Barbara, showed her the good life, and then brought her back to cold winters again back in Connecticut after that. But when I came back, things had changed dramatically. And so this signals how quickly things can change even here in our backyard. And now the marbled salamander is basically in all those ponds that I work in. And so a string of warm winters allowed it to colonize those ponds, and now it seems to be there for good. Like I said, this is a really important predator in these ponds. This is it eating a spotted salamander larva, and they love wood frogs. They love everything that it can fit in its mouth, basically. It's, you're seeing this suction feeding, which is the same way in which fish and salamanders consume the food. They have to suck in their food, usually head first. And when they eat all those organisms in the pond, they really can shift the pond to a different state. And so it's not just about losing some of those species or changes in their density. It's really about a complete ecosystem change. So this is one of the ponds that I studied when I was back in grad school in Connecticut, and I came back, and then this is what it looks like today. And so what happens is the predator moves in and it eats all the plant eaters. It eats all the vegetarians, the wood frogs and snails and some other invertebrates, and that releases this thick mat of algae. So it's a completely different system. It's not, in a natural system. It's just a system that we would see in the South, not in some of the northern parts of Connecticut, for example. So what's the positive? I said this about recovery, and a lot of this can be pretty disappointing and pessimistic. But one of the things that gets me out of bed in the morning is that some of these things can adapt, and that's been something that I've been really interested in. So evolution is a powerful force, and what we see is that here the predator, the marbled salamander, is decreasing the diversity of those organisms in those vernal pools. But at least one of their prey, the spotted salamander here, is able to adapt to that predation and actually dampen out some of those changes, and so it can maintain at least some of those other organisms in those ponds. And so adaptation is important for us. We know that some species can do it and others can't. And so we're trying to figure out which ones might be able to adapt to climate change and be okay, and which ones can't. So we don't think the saltmarsh sparrows probably will have the capacity to adapt in the time frame they have. But maybe some of the other creatures can. So, throughout my talk, I sort of took you from Alaska. But I hope I've convinced you that you don't have to go to Alaska in a helicopter to see these changes, that these changes are happening right in our backyard. And what I want to leave you with is a few things of what we can all do together. And one thing, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I think we need to keep our baselines. So it's easy, for example, for the students today to forget what it was like to be in a normal climate. What was it like to be in Connecticut during the blizzard of 1975? There's a picture from a suburb of Hartford here. So we need to keep that baseline, and so we know what we can return to. Renewable energy is amazing, and in fact, wind and solar are competitive now against the fossil fuels. Some cases are even cheaper. So hopefully we can continue to support renewable energy. One way to do that really immediately is just to switch your provider. So in Connecticut, we can choose our provider, and you can choose 100%. And it's a little bit more, but not that much more, considering how much the prices have been raised by the electric companies. And you can support this transition. And the other thing, we'll be talking a lot more about with folks in my community and other communities, is that we all can do our part, and we can choose to buy electric or hybrid car, and we can choose to get solar panels on our house, and that's great, and we all need to do that. But also we want to talk to other people, so that it's not just our house, but we can be an influencer and talk to other people and say, hey, this is great. I'm getting free power, or I love my electric car. It's about doing your part, but also being a role model for your community. I think that's really, really important, because it goes from one person to 2 and 4 and 8. And, I'm really interested in this idea, as I talk to land trusts around the state, that, maybe one thing we should be considering is, as we protect land, thinking of protecting it in corridors. So we think that organisms are going to move, say, to the north with climate change, if they can. They need those habitats, those stepping stones in order to do that. And, we'd like to create those corridors, which might allow them. So you can imagine creating, in combination with other land trusts and other agencies, these corridors of green spaces, that the species can hop along and move up. And then when the temperatures come back to normal, they can come back to us. I think that could be a little bit more regional type of a plan, but something that we might consider doing. And, honestly, I'm not just saying this because I'm here, but land trusts play a critical role in protecting that habitat. Many of these species are already threatened and endangered. And so just taking away those other threats is really important to give them the capacity to deal with this other threat that's now rising in terms of climate change. So please, I really thank you for your efforts and hope that you can continue protecting that area, not, for the species, but also for everyone that enjoys those species. So with that, I'll end, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Hey, Mark, I've got a question for you. It's Steve White. We're involved in some pond restoration activities around Wilton. We've got some ponds that are, silting up and having difficulties. Would you be willing to talk with us about those offline at some point? It seems like you're quite knowledgeable about ponds, and not everybody else is.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to talk to you about that.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mark. That was a great talk. I have some questions, but I'd love to hear if anyone else does first.
David, I have two questions. This is Scott Bogan. Mark, first question is, in one of your early charts that covered several thousand years of kind of average temperatures, it looked like there was a steady cooling from about the year 1000 until, the last 30 or 40 years. Did I read that right? And could you explain why that was happening? And then the second question is, in the investment communities in Wall Street, with carbon capture and pricing for carbon credits and such, one of the proposed solutions that some people think will become quite popular is for enterprises and such to be basically buying tracts of land and or planting forests. And my question is, given the challenges that you're talking about in the ecosystem and the beetle population, would that actually work? Will the forests, through aggressive continual planting, take hold and survive, or would it just possibly be a wasted effort? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Yeah, so in terms of the cooling, yeah, the Earth was actually in a gradual, slow cooling phase when we started to increase greenhouse gases. And so what we've seen is that, prior to that period, some of that was due to the release of sulfur dioxide from volcanoes, and that cooled the Earth for periods. And you probably heard of the medieval cool period and another period after that. But there was sort of a slight cool into the Earth. And as greenhouse gases were emitted, then we entered into this pretty rapid warming stage. So you're correct in seeing those temperature changes. In terms of forests and carbon capture, I think that's one way we might work to capture carbon. I'm a big fan of planting forests in places where there would normally be forests, and we're not going to displace local people. In part because it not only does the carbon capture, but also helps with biodiversity. It actually does a lot of services too, like pollution control, provides clean water. So there's lots of great benefits to planting forests. the carbon capture can take a while, and it depends on types of trees you plant. So, the benefits are there, but it takes a little bit longer than, say, shifting away from fossil fuels and into renewables right now. It is a challenge as we think about the pests that might be emerging with climate change and those threats to those forests. The pine beetle example is restricted to certain trees in the north here that aren't usually ones that are put into plantations. So like I said, the pitch pine is not one that would normally be used for that. But yeah, I think what we need to do is be able to predict those changes better. And it's something that biologists are just sort of coming to. And in that, we've sort of playing catch up with the climate scientists who have these great models and team together and we're able to predict climate change. We're really just started getting there in terms of really good models to predict something like an outbreak of pine beetles in a forest and those threats. But I think, working with say finance, that could help create those better predictions. That might be one way forward. And then you could say, okay, well, this forest is going to be a good investment, and this one maybe has too many threats.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I actually had Mark. I had a question very similar to Scott's. I've been through my graduate degree. I was made aware that it's actually nitrogen that we should be worried about more so than carbon, and that agriculture is actually one of the major emitters of carbon, and that, believe it or not, eating local, like less traffic on your veggie or your meat, and eating more plant-based can actually reduce. It's something like 60 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of beef versus 1 gallon of water to produce a loaf of bread, sort of thing. So I'm just curious, your scary models of losing the salt marsh sparrow in 2055, have you seen any more optimistic models that involve culture shifts and trends and hopefulness in regards to not losing habitat and not seeing such extinction rates?
Yeah, so the scary part was the end of that graph, but we can choose where we want to be on that graph. And so the quicker that we address the problem, the lower down we are on that graph. And those are extinction rates that will take a while to fulfill. And so that's another important point. So when I say 3% right now, it doesn't mean that 3% of species are extinct because of climate change. It means that they're threatened, and in the future they would go extinct. But that means that we also have some time to protect them. And so I think the rosy part of it is that if we can keep the Earth from warming too much, and then we can act to try to protect those species as best we can, then we won't see those extinction rates. It's always the worst case scenario there. In terms of food production, so the major contributions to climate change are energy production and transportation, but agriculture is in there as a third one. And certainly there are ways to improve our agriculture, make it more efficient, and I think part of that could be a bit of a diet shift and moving away from really intensive beef production and moving more toward healthier vegetables. I'm not a vegetarian, but I really have become really savor that once a month nice beef meal and shifting to chicken and fish instead, because it is better for your health, but also better for the world as well. Yeah.
I have another question if no one else has any. That salamander you displayed that's consuming all the vegetarians in the pond, that really displaced that photo. from your graduate program to your PhD. Is there I know that it's aggressive, but is there a predator in its natural environment, like a biological that can be introduced or has shown success in taking care of that guy?
No, it seems to be pretty bomb-proof. Yeah, in part because it does this really weird thing of laying its eggs in the fall and then surviving over winter, that there's really nothing that can touch it. There's some beetles that eat a few of them, but it doesn't seem to have a big effect. And they also share those ponds with newts, so red-spotted newts. But I just did some work and looked to see if they were able to control them, and the newts don't seem to eat them very much. So yeah, they really are at the top of the food chain in those little ponds.
Yeah, and if they start eradicating the lower ends, it's going to just go all the way up to your major fauna. You know, your anything that's involving in and around the pond. That's scary.
Yeah, like I said, it's natural for the southern part of the country and southern parts of our state, but it's a real change that's happening as it moves northward.
Mark, if anyone wants to know more about your work, I know I posted a couple of links on our website, but where could folks maybe follow or track your status outside of papers, published papers? Is there anywhere else that they can follow what you're doing?
Oh yeah, we post things on our website, and post things on Twitter. So people are that used to be on Instagram, but I just can't keep up with everything. So I had to choose Twitter.
Well, thank you so much. If no one else has any questions, I would just like to say thank you for everyone that had attended, and everyone that is a member and contributes, and all the trustees and staff and interns and everyone. And thank you, Mark, for not only walking us through the history of climate change and how it's affecting our climate, but for giving kudos to land trusts for being one of the mechanisms to help decelerate habitat loss and to slow down extinction rates. So thank you for that. That's encouraging. And again, I'll open it up one last time, but if no one has any questions, I'll move the meeting over to Steve and Mark for adjournment.
Thank you very much. Keep doing the good work you're doing.
Thank you.
With that, are there any questions for Steve or for David, or any other officer or trustee of the land trust at this time? If not, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Great job, David. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, David.
Very welcome.
Thank you, David.
Very
Thank you,
welcome.
David.
Thank you.